This video is part 3 in our series on prospect tracking and deals with what numbers you should be tracking in your sales system in the club. I get a lot of calls from club owners who say, I need more members. And that's an easy thing to say when you need more members. But a lot of times we don't know where the lapse is. Is it from not enough prospects coming into the club? Or is it because once the prospects come in or call, we're not doing enough with them? So this particular video is going to go into which numbers that we need to track in your sales system from when the phone call first comes in right through the tour. And depending on what type of club you're in, these numbers might be different. So we're going to focus on the numbers in a traditional club today, but the same things should be tracked whether you're a traditional club versus a hybrid club versus a functional training studio or a personal training studio. And they also will change based on the type of marketing that you're doing. So if you're doing no marketing, then none of these numbers will apply. If you're doing traditional marketing versus social media versus guerrilla marketing, these numbers might be slightly skewed as well. But for a traditional club who's doing a variety of different types of marketing, this is what you should be shooting for in your club. So we're going to start out with phone calls. And a phone call obviously is different than the walk-in because the walk-in is already interested in what you do and your numbers should be higher. A phone call could be coming in from somebody who does have good intentions, but at the same time, they're not really making that move yet. So it's our job as salespeople, as front counter people, in order to entice them to go from that looky-loo stage, I'm just inquiring, to I've got to get in that club. And the first thing that we know from any sales system is that we don't just let somebody go. There's a questioning and answering process that we put in place in order to increase this number. So we're going to start with a typical 2 call a day. If you have a club that misses 2 calls a day, and I had a guy in New Jersey for years that had just a horrible person on the phone, a horrible person at the front desk, never explored any options, never had any personality in the phone call, never sounded interested in the prospect, and we started tracking it, and she was missing way more than 2 calls a day. And this is where this process came from. So in that particular scenario, he was missing 2 calls per day. And that 2 calls per day over the course of a month, 30 days equals 60 calls. And in our world, we're going to have some type of a script that the staff is going to follow. They're going to engage in conversation. They're going to ask a lot of questions of the prospect. They're going to build rapport. They're going to entice them to come into the club. So if they're doing everything correctly, they will try to book an appointment. And the first number that we're going to look at is our appointment ratio. And in a traditional club, if you're doing everything right, your appointment ratio should be about 70%. So this gives us then 42 appointments in this scenario. And then we also are going to try to book them for the same evening, and if we can't, for the next evening. And if it is the next evening, we're going to follow up and confirm that appointment during the day the next day to increase our show ratio. So that's the next number we're going to look at, which is our show ratio. And our show ratio in this system should be 75%, which should give us about 31 tours or 31.5 shows. Tours, presentations, shows, people in the club. And then if we have 31.5 people come in, we then are going to take them on a tour. We're going to show them the club. We're going to go through a question and answer process. We're going to learn about what they've done in the past, what they've tried, what they weren't successful at. We're going to go through some entry barriers that they might have. We'll sit down with them, we'll present prices, and hopefully they will buy. So that would be our sales or closing ratio, which in this case should be about 50%. So now I have roughly 15 to 16 sales. So in this particular scenario, the numbers that we're tracking are appointment ratio, show ratio, your tours / presentations, and your sales / closing ratio. And if this scenario takes place, if you have 60 calls at 70%, you have 42 appointments. At 75% show ratio, you have 31.5 shows. At a 50% closing ratio, you have 15.75 sales or new members. Now, to take this one step further, just to show you how important this is, if you miss those 2 calls a day and you don't get those 15.75 sales per month, in a typical scenario, your membership price might be $49 per month, which would give you a loss of $771 that month. And then if you times that by the 12-month membership contract that they probably would have signed, you have a loss of $9,252. And then if that happens every month, you have that times 12 months equals a loss of $111,024 for the year. And this is what this guy was losing in his club in New Jersey. And when we got in there and we started tracking these numbers, we figured out where his weak points were. We solved those weak points. In one case was a staff person who was handling the phone. Then we put a system in place to increase the effectiveness of each one of these numbers. And he started increasing his profit because of that.